Did you guys see this? CIG just, I don't even know where to begin. They dropped this bomb at a bar citizen in China that completely changes how capital ships work. Like fighters won't even be able to damage javelins anymore. Not do less damage, I mean practically immune. While everyone was hyping up 4.0 at that time, the devs quietly revealed something that's going to turn fleet combat on its head. I've spent 3 years organizing these massive fleet battles with my org. Last month we were in this absolute nightmare scenario where, let me back up. I was piloting this hammerhead, right? And we're getting absolutely hammered by these fighters that frankly shouldn't have been able to touch us. And the whole time I'm thinking, this just doesn't make sense for a ship this size. It's like bringing a water pistol to a tank fight and somehow winning. That's what makes these changes so vindication, I guess? If you've ever been on a capital bridge watching your 30 million UEC investment melt to a couple of gladiuses, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So what actually happened was CIG held this bar citizen event in China. You know, one of those dev meetups that somehow always reveals more than the official streams, and they just laid it all out. Changes to capital ships, ground vehicles, survival systems, everything. The suits would probably call it rebalancing the combat ecosystem to better reflect size-appropriate damage mitigation thresholds, or whatever corporate speak they use internally. But what it really means? Big ships are finally going to feel like big ships. Look, we've all been there. You spend months grinding for a hammerhead or worse. You actually spend real money on something like a Polaris, and then you get melted by 3 fighters in 30 seconds. It's heartbreaking. And between you and me, I think CIG finally realized they have a lot of disappointed whale backers who were promised these fortress ships and got paper tigers instead. Here's something most Star Citizen content never covers. And I get why. It's not sexy to talk about design philosophy. But what CIG is doing here is fundamentally rethinking capital ship combat. They confirm that weapons under size 5 will basically just bounce off Javelin-class vessels. Like not even tickle them. Pew pew, nothing. And get this, capital shields will actually regenerate while under fire from smaller weapons. I was in the PTU last week, right? Had my fully upgraded saber, military components the whole 9 yards, and I couldn't even make the shield percentage budge on a hammerhead. Not even a little bit.
I can already hear some of you. But I've been saving up for months for my first capital ship. Or, are they seriously nerfing my fighter? The forums are already a war zone over this. Some thread about capital ships has like 300 pages of people going at each other's throats. Let's be real for a second. How many times have you brought out your expensive ship only to get ganked by some kid in an arrow who just started playing last week? Yeah, exactly. It's infuriating. But these changes aren't just about making big ships stronger. There's something deeper happening with how CIG wants us to actually play this game. Ground combat is getting a complete overhaul. Look, I'm just gonna say it. Ground gameplay in Star Citizen right now is terrible. It's bad. We've got what? The Ursa, Cyclone, Nova, and Ballista? That's it? There are massive gaps in what we can do planetside. So they're developing hover tanks, larger ground vehicles comparable to the Cutlass Black, and even combat hovercraft. And they specifically mentioned weather effects that might prevent air support during major ground battles. Oh man, we had this Jump Town op last month that was it was a disaster. We brought Ursa rovers because that's all we had, right? Then these guys roll up with ballistas and novas and just absolutely obliterated us. We couldn't do anything. Now imagine that same scenario, but there's this massive storm overhead, so nobody can bring in air support, and you've got these hover tanks rushing across the terrain while a mobile base vehicle is setting up defensive positions. That's the kind of gameplay they're building toward. It's not just bigger vehicles or more guns. It's about creating these dynamic battlefields where the environment itself becomes part of the strategy. Okay, so last week, and I'm still kind of salty about this, I was piloting my 890 jump with some org mates through Pyro. We'd spent like 2 hours loading it with supplies because, that's what Star Citizen gameplay is right now. We're cruising along, feeling pretty confident because, well, it's an 890 jump. It's massive, it's expensive, it should be tough, right? Then these pirates show up, 2 hammerheads and a redeemer. Initially, we were like, okay, we've got this. Our shields can hold. 20 minutes later, I'm screaming into my mic, everybody get to the escape pods, while my engineer is frantically trying to redirect power to the quantum drive. We had hull breaches in 3 sections. Our portside guns were completely gone. Jimmy, Jimmy, always flying his Pisces. Jimmy was floating in space because he got blown out of a hull breach. We barely made it out with 15% hull integrity. And the whole time I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. My luxury yacht, my capital-sized, incredibly expensive luxury yacht shouldn't be falling apart this easily. Now here's where things get interesting. The Maelstrum damage model. CIG revealed that 70% of Squadron 42 vehicles already have it implemented, which means it's coming to the PU sooner than we thought. This isn't just prettier explosions, folks. This completely transforms how ships work. The weight distribution will be automatically calculated based on component materials and thickness. Lose a wing? Your ship doesn't just lose hit points. It literally becomes unbalanced and pulls in that direction. For those just starting out, imagine lining up a perfect landing, but your damaged starboard engine is causing you to constantly drift right. You're going to need to develop actual piloting skills to compensate. For veterans, think about how this transforms dogfighting. You won't just be aiming at the enemy ship. You'll be targeting specific systems to create flight instabilities your opponent has to manage. Knock out their port thrusters and watch them struggle to make left turns. This is what many of us backed for back in 2013. Remember those old damage model videos Chris Roberts showed us, where ships would break apart piece by piece instead of just exploding? We're finally getting there after way too many years. So I was on Spectrum last night. Bad idea before bed, I know. And there's this thread called Capital Ships Are Useless that's been going since like 2020. 300 pages of people arguing. The veterans who dropped thousands on Idrises and Javelins back in 2014 are basically throwing victory parties in there. Finally, my investment means something. Meanwhile, the fighter pilots are losing their minds. But how am I supposed to solo a Javelin now? As we say in the verse, size does matter after all. But here's the thing, I get both sides. I've been the solo fighter pilot, and I've commanded capital ships. There needs to be a balance. CIG is walking a tightrope here. If they make capital ships too powerful, small orgs and solo players get left behind. Make them too weak, and those massive pledges feel worthless. It's about creating an ecosystem where everyone has a role, you know? All right, let's get tactical. How do you adapt to these changes? First, and I cannot stress this enough, reconsider your fleet composition. If you've been that solo fighter pilot who can take on the world, that era is ending. You need to either join an org with capital ships or diversify your hangar with something that can mount Psi 7+ weapons. Second, when engaging capitals, forget about destroying them outright unless you've brought serious firepower. Focus on disabling engines and weapon systems. A capital ship that can't move or shoot is effectively neutralized without having to destroy it.
If you own a capital ship, God, I hope you're taking notes. Positioning is going to be everything. Since you can't quickly reposition anymore, where you choose to engage is going to determine the entire battle outcome. Bad initial placement, you're done. Start practicing now. For those middle-of-the-road ships like Connies and Corsairs, you guys are about to become super valuable. You're the sweet spot that can actually damage capitals while still being maneuverable enough to avoid their big guns. And a pro tip they didn't explicitly say, but I'm reading between the lines, with point defense turrets getting buffed against fighters, maintaining distance while targeting specific systems is going to be crucial. Get too close to that Javelin, and those little defense turrets are going to swat you like flies. So there you have it. Capital ships becoming true fortresses, ground vehicles expanding dramatically, and Maelstrum completely changing how damage works. It's a lot to take in. What are you going to do about it? Are you doubling down on your fighter skills, investing in a larger ship, joining an org? Let me know in the comments. And look, I get it. Change is scary. Some of you have spent years perfecting your current setups and tactics, but that's Star Citizen, isn't it? Always evolving, sometimes in ways we don't expect or want. Thanks for sticking with me through all of this. It's a lot to process, I know. Next week, I'll be diving into that mysterious RSI meteor announcement and what it might mean for, well, everything. You know what Chris Roberts always says, it'll be done when it's done. I guess the same applies to game balance too. Oh, almost forgot. They're also changing how the toilet works on ships, because of course they are. That's Star Citizen for you. $1 million capital ships and toilet gameplay in the same update. Never change, CIG. Never change. Until next time, fly safe or at least try to. See you in the verse.